We're coming together today to look at how we can prepare for 2025 by the numbers and the stars. And I'd like to say that 2025 is a really significant year that we'll be going into many details about, particularly because the outer planets, which are named Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto after archetypal forces from that were named in Greek mythology, they're all changing signs going from earth or water into air or fire. So we're having a whole different elemental energy coming up in 2025. The energy of earth is kind of heavy, dense, very focused and practical. The energy of water can take many forms. It can be flowing, it can be stagnant, it can be frozen. Depends on how the water is moving. It is associated with our emotions, generally speaking. And then there's also now, as we move into air, it's moving more into a mental perspective, the mind, and how we think about things, our beliefs, our attitudes. And then fire, what is it that inspires us, illuminates us, just like fire can warm us, can burn us, or it can give us light and illuminate the way for us. So 2025 has a lot of potential, and how we work with the potential is what we'll be focusing on today, as well as getting clarity about what kind of practices can help you move through the coming year. Now, as we move forward here, we have been writing our names in the chat. I'd like you to, reflect on where you come from, where others come from. We all come with a body of wisdom that comes to us and through us from our ancestors. We also come from a body of wisdom that's based on the land upon which we rest, whether it's in the mountains or in the foothills, like here in Calgary, or whether you're by the ocean, or whether you're in a forest area. There's a teaching and a wisdom that comes to us. And I'd like to acknowledge the land itself and also the wise indigenous ones, the keepers of the knowledge of the land, whatever land you're living on, and give thanks to them. I want to particularly acknowledge, because I'm living in Canada, the indigenous wisdom that comes from Turtle Island. This happens to be Grandma Sarah Smith. Grandmother Sarah Smith is a Mohawk elder who's no longer with us in physical form. She and I worked together in the, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago when we met. I invited her to come work with me in an unlearning racism program for the International Council of Psychologists. And she shared with us many teachings, including this one, describing that the indigenous wisdom knowledge keepers from the Americas understand that we are moving from the fourth world cycle into the fifth world cycle. And Grandma Sarah said specifically that as we transition from the fourth to the fifth world cycle, we are presented with two paths. One path gives birth to understanding and harmony. The other is the way of fear, violence, and war, causing injury to our Mother Earth and to all our relations. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with First Nations or Native American perspectives, all our relations includes everything: the star people, the heavens, the earth, the sun, the moon, all of those who fly or walk upon the earth or swim or crawl, including all life forms, plant, and even the mineral kingdom also has intelligence. And we honor and recognize all of our relations and how we're all connected, and how when we injure one, we injure all. When we act from fear, which moves us towards violence, it is an injury that affects all of us. So in this transition from the fourth to the fifth world cycle, we have an opportunity to choose the path and to give birth to the deeper wisdom that's available to us now that we'll be discussing this evening at a path of understanding and harmony. Now, I would like to say that if you are watching this on demand, I know many people who signed up were not able to be here this evening. So if you're watching this on demand, at any time, feel free to pause, take notes. When we break into a breakout room, do some journal writing for yourself during those breakouts and commune within the sanctuary of your own soul at those times, unless you happen to be watching it with somebody else. So, the other thing that Grandma Sarah said, and this is something that is part of the teachings that I share from the Western mystery traditions. And the Western mystery traditions are also a path of wisdom. And what I'll be sharing with you this evening comes from that lineage. So before birth, during transition, which is a very delicate time when we give birth, it's very important to envision the new life that is being born into the world, to dream the dream of humanity, and to practice living in harmony, bringing understanding to each other and to all our relations. And so, with that as our backdrop and acknowledgement, I'd also like to acknowledge that one of my teachers and dear friends is here this evening, Aaron Greenberg. Aaron and I met, I don't know, maybe 40, 45 years ago, and we began studying the Tarot and the Kabbalah and the astrological correspondences. And there's a lot of this that I'll be sharing with you this evening. So, Aaron, I really wish to honor you this evening. And thank you so much for honoring me by being here tonight. Thank you. And I have to say, I've had many teachers, as all of us have, and everybody here is also a teacher. And when we share with each other, open your hearts, open your minds, and allow yourself to rest in the wisdom and just fine tune whatever matches or fits for you. Feel free to use it. If something doesn't match or fit for you, then by all means, just let it go. So the wisdom teachings that I'll be sharing this evening are from the Hebraic Jewish tradition. And I like to use the Tarot, which I think of it as an ancient book of wisdom that contains the wisdom of the ages in pictures. Particularly, it's a blend of symbols. The language of the soul is symbolic. And so I'll be introducing you this evening to the symbols, and some of you are already experts in this. I noticed Peggy Lynch is here, a very skilled and astrologer. So, some of you have already tremendous skill and capacity in some of these ancient methods. And some of us are just beginning. So I'm going to be presenting in such a way that whatever your level is, you'll be able to enjoy and gain something from this evening. So we'll be reviewing numerology, a little bit of astrology, the mythology and the stories, the ancient healing art of storytelling. And you'll notice when you look at the cards, when we bring them up, the colors, the images, the pictures speak to the soul without a whole lot of necessity for explanation, although I'll be giving some explanation, of course. So moving forward, think about what is the wisdom that your soul is carrying. In numerology, the numbers 1 through 9 identify primary kind of archetypal forces. These have been depicted in images of the first numbers 1 through 9 of the tarot cards. Each tarot card is also associated with an astrological symbol. So, for example, when you take the sum of the day and the month and the year of your birth, and if you haven't calculated that yet, please do it while I'm speaking right now. And just notice if you are a 1 vibration, reflect on what does it mean to be a magician, to be able to be a channel for that creative intelligence. What does your soul want you to carry this lifetime? If you understand astrology, what does it mean to be Mercury or the number 1, to be a pioneer and initiating, bringing through new ideas? For the number 2, the high priestess, What does it mean to you to be able to sit between what appear to be polar opposite experiences and to be able to find that sense of peace and to be able, like the moon, to reflect on the wisdom, like the number 2, to be able to find harmony and balance, or the goddess of the earth, known as the Empress, that creative force that is an expression of love that's represented by Venus. Perhaps you're a number 4, that stabilizing energy that allows for, and we move Aries back down here, allows for the capacity to be able to bring and support and protect new life in this world. Or perhaps you relate to the number 5, somebody who's been through the school of hard knocks, has learned the wisdom through personal experience, has found a way to integrate it in a way that's sustainable, represented by Taurus, by knowing primary values and how to share those teachings, the wisdom of those teachings with others. Or perhaps you're the number 6, which is the Gemini number. How is it that you are skilled at the depth of your soul in the art and craft of relationship and bringing healing into relationships by, like the number 6, honoring harmony? And then the number 7 is, how do you have a philosophy in life that, like the charioteer, allows you to move forward in a way that nourishes and nurtures and supports life, which is the Cancer, in a way that is nourishing for yourself, for the earth, and for others? Or perhaps you're a number 8 and you had the gift and the wisdom in your soul of how to tame the animal instincts, knowing when to open your mouth and close your mouth based on being guided by that greater infinite intelligence within you. And like Leo, creatively finding a way to express yourself. Or perhaps you relate to the number 9, which is the sign of completion, humanitarianism, following your own inner light, the path of growth that is associated with Virgo, the integration that comes through the wisdom. So I'm going to ask Paige to split you into little groups of 3. You're going to have about 4 minutes to share with each other. Just what does your number mean to you? If you could identify what your number is, or if you identify with the image of the card or with the astrology, just share what's your sense of the wisdom your soul is carrying. And if these numbers don't speak to you, then maybe you already have just a direct sense. And try to keep your sharing to about a minute, and then we'll be coming back into the big circle again. Okay, very good. So welcome back. And what you'll notice when we look at the coming year within the context of the tarot and numerology, we spell out the year 2025 with the tarot cards. And you'll notice one of the things that I think is so interesting is that we have 100 years of 2020 for this whole time, since the year 2000 until 2099, which is all about learning how to come into harmony and balance. And through the process of self-reflection, represented by the high priestess and the moon, and that capacity to liberate ourselves, to free ourselves, to learn to take risks like the Fool represents, by enlightening our minds with the clarity of that radiance of the white sun. What's also interesting is 2025 is a divine marriage, the marriage of the high priestess, which is that inner reflection, and then the wisdom gained through the world of experience, which is represented by the Hierophant. So we have the high priest and high priestess this coming year. How do we now, within ourselves, come into balance between inner and outer realities? What's so fascinating is that the planet Uranus this coming year plays a very significant role. It's changing signs, going from the Earth sign Taurus into the sign of Gemini in July. What's also interesting, though, is even more significant is Pluto has finally entered Aquarius. In 2008, Pluto entered the sign of Capricorn. And wherever Pluto goes, it's a sign of this is got to change. We get down to the bare bones and we start rebuilding. We go through a death and a renewal and rebirth. So what was happening in 2007 and before, particularly in areas like banking and government and authoritarian top-down structures, those have been totally changed from how they were before. And all you need to do is remember the crash in 2008 to understand that. Now Pluto has entered Aquarius on November 19th. It's going to be there for 20 years until 2024. And so you can expect for the next 20 years, we're going to be learning how to give birth to ourselves, learning how to be able to release and let go so we can regenerate, transform, and transmute, move into new forms, particularly in the sign of Aquarius, in relationship to our friendships, in relationship to technology. Aquarius is associated with technology. It's actually ruled by the planet Uranus. And so we end up having the influence of Pluto acting on those Uranian qualities, the quality of higher mind that is seeking to be transformed in the way we are connecting with our friends, connecting with our associations, connecting with community. Community is going to be really key over the next 20 years. And what community looked like before and what community is going to look like 20 years from now will be very, very different. So clarify for yourself, what is it that brings you together with like-minded others? And how do you allow for the space for the unique gifts of the individual to be expressed within the circle of your community? That's what Aquarius is about. But the self-expression is for the purpose of humanity, where we give our unique individual gifts, not only for our own sake, but for the sake of community, for the sake of that sense of interconnection with others. Now, the downside of Aquarius is that it is mental and it can be through the mind, getting fixed air, locked in certain beliefs, and becoming quite zealous. And so, as we're transitioning into Aquarius, and we've already experienced some of this, don't be surprised if you notice some of that zealous kind of, I know the truth and I know what's right. And so we might see a rise in communities that come together with a kind of mission that may or may not be for everyone. It may be for their particular group. And so we might see a rise in nationalism, for example, which I think we're experiencing. We've noticed this in different countries worldwide, actually. Now, what's also interesting, that's what's happened in November, that Pluto is now fully in Aquarius. It's been going back and forth from Capricorn to Aquarius for the last couple of years. But now what we're finding is as we move into the year, we also notice Neptune. Neptune is that experience of moving beyond the boundaries and allowing for a new vision, allowing for our idealistic, universal, boundless nature at the collective level to begin to have an influence on humanity, while Pluto is also in Aquarius. Moving into Aries, moving from Pisces, which was a water sign, during which time over the last few years, since it's in a sign for 14 years. So if you look at what was going on in 2011 in your life and what was happening in our world, look at the rise of how now spirituality is now almost becoming common, as opposed to something that, in the West, it was considered fringe. It is no longer fringe. People are talking about spirituality in new ways, allowing for intuition and sensitivity. As it moves into Aries, what will be especially interesting is the fire will be igniting that awareness of a need for, Aries is often the leadership and something new coming into form, a new form of leadership that is visionary. But the problem with Neptune is that it also not only is ideals and visions and dreams, it's also disappointments and disillusionment. And so we may find at different phases of over the next 14 years, the disillusionment with how leadership was handled in the past, and now revisioning what is it to be a leader now. If you're in a role of leadership, take time to really revision what that means to you in your life now. It's also especially important too to realize that there may be a whole generation of new leaders coming forward in the next 14 years with a new vision. And a part of that new vision is very much going to be influenced by what it is we've had to let go of so that we can start building new technologies, new sense of connection, new sense of relationship to each other, starting with this experience also, which is going to be really highlighted when Uranus goes into Gemini, moving out of Taurus. It's a 7-year cycle. So the first 7 years of this 20-year Pluto uh, transition that we're involved in, which is being influenced by a new vision, is mainly going to take the form of a new vision that incorporates technology, communication, transportation, and health and medicine, because Gemini is associated with the planetary influence of Mercury. And Mercury is associated with how well do we think? What are we thinking now? It's higher mind is Aquarius, lower mind is Mercury. And so having Uranus go into Gemini is how are we uniting our ordinary, everyday ideas, beliefs, and attitudes with a higher intelligence? Now, of course, we have this misnomer that we're doing that through technology called artificial intelligence. But we really need to be clear that artificial intelligence is not intelligent. All it is accelerated computation. And so there's going to be this urge within us to try to speed everything up, to be as fast as the computers are, as fast as cyber communication. And it's going to be especially important with Pluto in Aquarius over the next 20 years to realize we are not machines. It's very important to reclaim and redeem what is it to be human, and how do we express our humanity in our technologies, in our communication, in the way we move in the world with transportation, in the way we do health, healing, and wholeness. The other thing about Gemini is it's the twins. We've noticed that there has been a lot of conversation about gender. This is something that's very much associated with Gemini as well, because it expands the concept of being united with the other, whoever the other is, and that experience of being twins as opposed to being separate. So don't be surprised if we start noticing something settling in around all of the challenges that we have been facing around the question of gender. Uranus has a tendency, and you'll notice, particularly we've experienced over the last period of time, because Uranus is always somewhere, that it is bringing unexpected, unpredictable, radical change, innovative change, and revolutionary change. So the first 7 years, but particularly this coming year, 2025, is bringing us a tremendous amount of change. Now, if we continue going forward, I just want to look a little bit at the past so we can get a better perspective on what it is that's coming for us. Pluto in Aquarius, which is about death and rebirth and transformation, as I said before, with the planetary ruler of Uranus, which is innovative and revolutionary. The last time it was in Aquarius was back in 1777 to 1798. That was the time of the first industrial revolution. That happened to have been a mechanical industrial revolution. There are 4 industrial revolutions that have happened since 1777. And I need to mention that Uranus was discovered in 1781. many people count that that discovery of Uranus right in the middle of this cycle at the early phase of Pluto in Aquarius, that was the launch of our being on the cusp of the Aquarian age. When we talk about the procession of the ages and how it is that we move from one age to another age, it takes time. It takes about 2,200 years to move from one age to another. I'm not going to get into the details of that today. Each age is about 2,600 years, 26,000 years long. So when we move from one age to another, there's something called a cusp, where we're having a blend of the last age and the next age. For the last few hundred years, we have been in a transition into Aquarius. Some people say that by 2044, that will be when we're on the other side of the cusp, where we're dealing with being more in Aquarius than in Pisces. But it still is going to be a transitionary period for us. So be aware that this is where it's especially important to hold a vision of what humanity is giving birth to, and how can you be an example of that. It's so important to recognize the revolutionary aspect of Pluto in Aquarius. That was the time in the 1777 to 1798. We also experienced the French Revolution and the American Revolution. So don't be surprised if there is the fomenting of revolution in many different forms. Now, what's also really interesting is that at this time, when Pluto was, oops, and I have to just move my little Libra down here. I can't do it from this screen. When Pluto went into Aquarius back 240 years ago, 44 years ago, Uranus happened to have gone into Gemini then as well. But Neptune, instead of going into Aries, was in Libra. I thought that was really interesting. Libra, as you know, we think of it as the sign of peace and justice and balance. But Libra is also, as much as it's about peace, it's about war. And if there is a feeling of something being unjust, then Libra will come forward to fight for what is just and true. And I believe that's what we were seeing with the revolutionary urge in France during the 1700s, and also the American Revolution, which was seeking to find freedom, which is again that Uranus in Gemini. We also, unfortunately, had Pluto in Leo and with Pluto in Leo, it becomes the experience of self-absorbed self-expression. So it could be more self-serving. And that could be when we look at the American Revolution in relationship to breaking away from the monarchy. It was wanting to establish its own identity as a sovereign nation separate from the rulership of a king. So there are some of these influences that are not the case now. Now we have the experience of Pluto in Aquarius, which is more humanitarian, but we still have the reflection of that experience of being focused on the self. The shift from being self to being communal and community minded is what the next 20 years will really be about. We also have Aries as the ruler of, in relationship to Neptune, which is Mars, and I'll get into that in a moment. But when we look at what was happening between the last time Uranus was in Gemini, we notice that there were tremendous innovations during that industrial revolution. So we had the industrial revolution of the mechanics. Then we had the next second revolution, which was mass production. And then we started moving into the digital revolution, which was in the 50s, but it started here with the development of technology of computers and microwaves. Other things that were happening in terms of transportation, which was Gemini's rulership as well, major changes in aviation, the development of cars and tanks, communication. We developed radar, electronics, FM radio. There were tremendous advances in medicine. All of this happened during wartime. But what's also interesting is that after the war, these also had commercial value. And Gemini also rules commerce, and that, turning something into a business and making money from it. So all of these advances that happened during war now have become commercial enterprises that have been capitalized on. That's also Gemini. The other thing that happened during this time, which happened to have been when the planet Pluto was discovered. Pluto is the lord of death and the underworld. Interestingly enough, the atomic bomb was generated at that time, developed, and then dropped, and we learned about being able to move warfare to killing masses of people and injuring the earth in horrible ways. We also, in order to make up for those injuries, tried to use nuclear energy for positive goals, such as, instead of electricity, to find another way to generate energy to support us. Also, the high contrast was during this period that we had the United Nations that was formed, that was part of that change that happened at that time. We also, as I mentioned, have Neptune in Aries. And when Neptune in Aries is going to be there for 14 years. So while we're going through this transformation and gaining a new vision, let's look at the kind of vision that happened 144 years ago when Neptune was in Aries before. Again, we have that idealism of what is it that allows us to move beyond the boundaries of the current culture and age, which 144 years ago was about slavery and not recognizing the value of human life and every human life as valuable. A war was fought over that in the United States, the Civil War, the Declaration of Emancipation of the slaves, and also the right for African Americans to vote in the United States. It's still hard won. We're still dealing with this transitionary period. Remember, we're moving into Aquarius. We still are fighting some of these battles. Also, though, what happened when Neptune was in Aries last time was there was a rise in spiritualism, and likewise the transcendental movement in philosophy and art, with amazing thinkers and poets like Walt Whitman, Thoreau, and Emerson. And again, I am looking at the Western tradition. It'd be wonderful to look at this from other cultures from around the world as well. For those of you who are watching this from Asia, I invite you to explore what were the visionary new ideals that were emerging in the mid-1800s. Now, one of the things that's very interesting is when we look at the number 2025, not only do we have Uranus and the High Priestess 2-0, the number 20 happens to be the Judgment card, which is associated with Pluto. So we have this 100 years of Pluto and Uranus acting upon each other. The power of transformation, going to the underworld and coming out the other side, renewed and reborn through the power of self-reflection, the High Priestess, and the experience of liberation, which is Uranus, the 0 number. Through self-reflection and inner wisdom, the High Priestess, we then have the capacity to learn the lessons that come from living in a world that is very challenging. Every single one of us is going through the school of hard knocks, and it's important to learn life's lessons and the wisdom gleaned, and how is every experience in our lives an expression of spiritual principle and a lesson for the soul's growth. So what is it that you have learned through the gifts and through the challenges that you have faced? When we look at the numbers of 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, we end up with the number 9. This is the hallmark of the coming year. We have the wisdom of the Hermit, symbolized also by Virgo, which says this is a year of growth, a time of going within the self to reflect, to find that sense of harmony and balance within the self. In the lantern that the Hermit holds is a six-pointed star, which is the Western symbol for the yin yang. One triangle points up, the other triangle points, let's see how I can do that, points down. We reach up to spirit to receive illumination, and at the same time, spirit is reaching down into us to fill us with the wisdom of infinite creative intelligence that we are bringing here into the body of our experience, into our lives on earth. In the Jewish tradition, it is said that the most sacred and the holiest experience is here on planet Earth. The earth itself is the holiest and most sacred place to be. And so, how do we honor that? We honor that through the symbols of the star pointing up and the star pointing down. We find that harmony and balance through self-reflection, connecting with inner guidance and intuition, finding that experience of what it is that we are each here for, and being a light bearer for that, whatever it is that you're here for, to bring forth the growth and the transformation in order to access that humanitarian gift. This is the time of letting go of the past, letting go of grudges, coming to closure and completion with things from the past. Because in 2026, we move into the number 1 or number 10. We move into a whole new vibration. So this year is really about taking time and space for yourself. Be very important to have a meditation practice this year, or to ramp up your meditation practice this year. In the Tarot, we have the major arcana, which we were looking at, that talk about the level of the soul and the steps the soul takes to grow and evolve and integrate the wisdom of the archetypal world, the forces of the universe. But those forces also take form in the personality. And our personality, or our ego, what we identify with, is associated with what's called the minor arcana. It breaks down into 4 suits. The suit of wands represents our intuitive spiritual self. The cups represents our emotional nature and feelings on the emotional level, our needs, fears, and desires. The swords represents the mind, the clear, discerning intellect, or the mind that is at war with itself. And then the pentacles or discs is associated with material, physical earth reality. And so when we look at what are the gifts and challenges of this year, and I invite you, of course, to watch this. Whoopsie, let me go back. I invite you to watch this again and to slow it down, because you'll all have access to this. Particularly what you can do this coming year as you face the tests and challenges on an intuitive level is to know what is your truth. What do you hold on to that you can rely on? Those wands represent our intuition, our self-trust, our vision, our capacity to use our psychic resources. So hang on to what it is that you know to be true from the inside out. That will be especially important when you start facing those challenges of the mind. The 9 of Swords is associated with Mars and Gemini, with the mind going in a million different directions. I look at this card, the 9 of Swords, as the card that teaches us humility. This is the card of regret. When we're making peace with the past and letting go of what's no longer needed, take time to reflect on and forgive yourself as you look at maybe how you missed the mark. In the Jewish tradition, the term sin actually translates as missing the mark. So take a moment to re-aim, to identify what is that point, that mark that you wish to make, What is it that you are here to bring through as a gift for yourself and for others, for your communities and for the earth itself this coming year? Forgive yourself for maybe not having done such a perfect job of that in the past. Realign and continue to go forward so that you can then experience the joy, the happiness, and the fulfillment that is available to you this coming year. I love this card. It's one of my favorites. When I was first learning tarot back in 1968, this card was associated in gypsy fortune telling with "you will get your wish." So imagine what it is your heart is dreaming of, your soul is desiring for you this coming year. And know that it's actually possible to have that dream, that wish, that deep soul's desire to be fulfilled. It's associated with Jupiter and Pisces. Expand into the possibility. What else is possible? And then notice that on the earth level, on the day-to-day practical level, Venus and Virgo. This is one of my favorite parts down here, as you'll notice in this card. There's a little snail in the corner, right in the lower left-hand corner. This means it's okay if things take time to come to fruition. Take your time. Things are growing, they are coming to fruition. The garden is rich, fertile, and will bring you what it is that you need to nourish yourself. So trust yourself, trust the process, even trust the challenges that you have faced as you come to completion with those challenges. Now, I like to look also at, let's see if I can get over there. We happen to be, and I kind of got up there a second ago, but I'm having a hard time getting there right now. There we go. We are going into, in January, on Chinese New Year, the year of the snake. I think it's really fascinating that as we enter Pluto into Aquarius, and we here are now in the time of the numeral 9, the Hermit, for the coming year. It's a reflection of a time of transformation and rebirth that is also reflected in the Chinese New Year. The many ancient systems all come together, giving us the same message, whatever the system is. The snake is about wisdom, intelligence, intuition, and creativity. And it's also, you have to be aware of that tendency within or what's going on around you for deception, jealousy, temptation, being less than above board, being somewhat cunning. So remember to choose, to remember, what are you born for? What are you here to bring through into the world this year, but also the long range mark of what is your destiny? Allow yourself to imagine that you have a deep purpose, and that purpose can show up in very simple ways, in the way you greet a friend or meet with someone. Allow yourself to dream the dream of humanity and practice living and bringing forward that humane spirit, living in harmony with yourself, with each other, and all of our relations. And I want to thank you for your kind attention. I'm going to stop sharing. We have just a little bit of time if there are any questions. I realize that this was really a rapid review. And I really want to thank you for being here and allowing me to share some of the ancient wisdom teachings that come from the Western tradition. So what I'd like to do is have you break into your breakout rooms one more time. This time, focus on one nugget that you received that you would like to act upon. I know that there was a lot of information. I'm sorry that happens when I teach like this. It just comes through. But take a moment to reflect, and maybe there's one thing that sits. So before we do the breakout room, I'm going to ask you to just close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath in. And just settle into yourself. Breathing in and out. And if you have a question, you can put it into the chat. Later, I'll take an opportunity to answer those questions. But for right now, just allow yourself to rest and reflect on what it is that spoke to you most. Just allow my voice to go way into the background. And you might notice that you're focusing on the image of a card or the thought of Aquarius or one of the signs, Neptune, Pluto, or Uranus, or the changes that are afoot and what it is that's changing in your life. Just notice of the practices. What truth do you wish to hold on to? Which intuitive resource is the one that you rely on? Is it your body that tells you what's true, or a vision, or a silent whispering of a deep wisdom voice? Is it your soul's dream or desire of what it is you wish to fulfill this year, and eliminating the blocks and barriers of regrets from the past? Are you perhaps developing patience? Whatever it is that is your spiritual practice this year, or if there's a meditation practice or a body, mind, spirit practice that you wish to commit to, just take note and reflect. So happy to be here with all of you. And I know that I was speaking really probably quickly, so I hope that you will enjoy pausing the video on demand when you get a copy of it. I would like to invite you to identify if there's one word that describes how you're feeling or what your vision is. One word, if you would just type that in the chat, and we're going to do a little closing ritual. Just take a moment, one word. Oh, I love it. And I'm going to read them out loud. Snail, dedicated, let go, wisdom, reflective, courage, intuition, hopeful, trust, change, magic, transformation, claim, gobsmacked, centered, deliberation. Very good. And now I invite you to stand up, strength. And whether you've typed your word in or not, hold your word in your heart and mind and create a gesture that expresses your word. Mine was also change. And I'd like you to express that in a body gesture and say it out loud to yourself. Change. And now, knowing that you're bringing this energy into the world and in through your body. And if you're interested in staying for a couple questions after, if you would just raise your hand, and I'll know whether we can stay for another maybe 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Yes, Catherine.
And I just want to acknowledge you because you've been mentoring me for decades. So I feel like there's like a lineage that's been passed on. So I want to just say thank you so much. And I'm wondering, what medicine would you recommend for us during this time as it relates to the number 9?
So the medicine for number 9 is time and space. To really take time and space to connect with that inner wisdom and to complete whatever needs to be completed, to let go of those old regrets and remorses so that you can open to the fulfillment that's available to you and your heart's desire this coming year. So in order to do that, in order to take time and space, it's really important to have a dedicated meditation practice, whatever your meditation practice is, whether it's a walking meditation practice, whether it's a mindfulness meditation practice, whether it's a mantra meditation, whether it's breath work, whether it's journal writing, watching your dreams, it doesn't matter. Whatever method you use it. And Julie, you're asking probable outcomes. Uh-oh, I just lost that. So let's see. Probable outcomes, lifetimes, timelines relate. Lower and higher timelines of ages of Aquarius, AI taking over versus freedom of humanity. Oh, this is really important. So let me get into that. For those of you who don't know, I'm off to China on Sunday, and I'll be moving from China to Thailand on the 31st of December, and then staying with my husband. We both have work in Asia, and I'll be coming back April 3rd. I'll be presenting actually at a conference, the International Academic Forum in Japan, teach as a panelist on a panel on the psychological impact of artificial intelligence. So let me answer this about the timelines and the probable outcomes, lower and higher timelines of the age of Aquarius, and AI taking over versus freedom of humanity, free energy, etc. You know, we're in the phase right now where we're in transition and we're wondering if the baby's going to be born or if the mother's going to die or if they're both going to die on the way out giving birth. It's important more than ever before to return to your meditation practice, to trust the process, to have faith in humanity, and to be an example of what it is that you want to give birth to. And don't take on the mass mind, because the mass mind is in a lot of pain right now. And so, in order to allow for something new to come forward, if you're feeling the pain because you're an empath, allow yourself to process that and come home to yourself and then bring forward what is really true for you that you want to bring into the world. Some of us, you know, some of us are sadly carriers of the pain and we sacrifice ourselves. I was just at a funeral of a young man who was 36 years old who took his own life. But the beautiful thing about that was his family read his letter to all of us at his funeral. And his letter was one of love and one of acknowledgement of everything that everybody in the family had offered to him and how he was leaving as an act of love and that he would pretty much had done what he needed to do. And this was his way of moving forward. You know, in our Western culture, we think of suicide as a sin against God. That is not true in every culture in the world. In Japan, for example, there are forms of suicide that are considered honorable. Some of you probably are familiar with harikari, for example. So, you know, or harikari, I think it's pronounced. So, you know, we are living in the time of Pluto, Lord of the underworld. We are transforming our ideas, Aquarius, and our beliefs to embrace a broader understanding of humanity and to move beyond the judgments that arise as a result of all of us being works in progress. So anyway, I hope that helps with the freedom of humanity. We are going to see a lot of weird side effects. For example, AI. Pretty soon, we're all going to have digital IDs. Already in Sweden, people have little chips inside of placed in their skin in order to pay for things quickly. You know, these things are already happening, and we are going to be seeing more and more of these kinds of technological intrusions, if you will. until we figure out a better way of being in relationship to technology and to our humanity and to the earth. However, I have faith in us, and I really do believe, if we have to have a belief, that that's what we're here for, that we're not here to repeat Atlantis, which is what happened, one of the last ages. We're moving into the fifth cycle. So from Mu to Lemuria to Atlantis to the time we're in now to the time we're moving into. Envision, how do you want things to be in the future for humanity on planet Earth? And as we move into and beyond the planet Earth, what do we want to take to our friends and neighbors who are living on other stars? Envision that and let that guide you. The best of humanity going forward. And one last question, if there's any more questions. Yes, Carol.
Yeah, thank you. So this is going to show how ignorant I am about some of this, but I noticed in the astrological signs relating to the numerology, there was no Libra.
Not,
Is
not
that
this.
zero, the Fool?
Yeah, the Fool is associated with the planet Uranus. Libra is associated with number 11, the Justice card.
Oh, okay, that explains it. Thank you.
Yes, each card is associated with either a planetary influence or a sign of the zodiac. So we have the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 10 planetary influences, the number 22, and that represents the 22 major arcana. So each of them represent, the archetypes of our relationship to the cosmos.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, good question. All right, so thank you again very much. Please do fill out the evaluations. And again, thank you all very much for coming. Much appreciated.